I think at this point of the S.H.Figuarts line, pretty much anything goes. If he or she or it appeared in the main anime or manga, it'll probably get a figure sooner or later. Maybe not in your or my collecting lifespan, but as long as the line is profitable, it'll probably get a figure. In saying that, Figuarts King Cold is still a pretty big deal for me, or I guess for any collector who grew up on Z. This was another one of those figures that had that, wow, I can't believe they're gonna make this factor. And even with the extensive roster we have now, yes, there are a few figures that still surprise me. And this was one of them. So let's see if King Daddy lives up to the family line. Every Frieza release up until now has been, in my opinion, nothing short of great, so I definitely have high hopes for this one. S.H.Figuarts Dragon Ball Z King Cold, let's go. So I have had King Cold for a bit more than a month now, but I never really got the chance to look at it closely until recently. From the people I've talked to about this figure, it's actually kind of a mixed bag. I've heard some good and I've heard some bad. But for me personally, I really like this release. It's not perfect and it's definitely not the best out of the Frieza family figures, but there's a lot to enjoy about King Cold. So let's start off on that note and take a look at the positive. He's big, he's chunky, which I like. I've always thought King Cold was similar to second form Frieza, but with a more muscular, slightly stockier build. I've seen a few comments saying his legs should be longer, but I like this slightly stouter build. Should he be bigger? Maybe. I guess it really depends on what you're basing his size on, because we all know how consistent Dragon Ball Z can be. But I think what most people want to see is how he sizes up against Mega Frieza and Trunks. I've seen sources that Frieza should be about where the knees are, and I've seen Frieza stand a little bit closer to King Cold's waist. For me, this works. He's still an imposing piece any way you slice it. I love the head sculpts, they're spot on to the anime, and I think Tamashii has us covered on all bases in terms of expressions. When I think King Cold, only a couple of iconic scenes come to mind. I guess you could say they're iconic because we don't really get too much screen time with him, but what I picture in my head are his cocky, nonchalant smirks. But also his teeth grit in battle expression against Trunks and an open mouth shout of desperation as he tried hopelessly to sneak one in on Trunks with his own sword. The sculpt work is spot on and the colors are just like how he appeared in the anime. The shoulders work great and have enough range for you to bring the arms together in without looking goofy. The tail works pretty good too, it supports the figure if you need it to, and just like every other Frieza, it's articulated at the base and middle section. His cape is okay, I guess. I'm still undecided whether or not I would have preferred a cloth cape rather than a sculpted plastic piece. I think it's short enough that you don't really need it to be a cloth goods cape, and it does hinge in the middle so you can get some movement out of it. They've included an extra piece for when he's sitting down on his throne so it doesn't get in the way, so that's a nice touch and, well thought out. It's purple on the outside and red on the inside, and for what it is, I think it does the job. And the way that it plugs into the figure makes it easy enough for you to swap it out for a custom cloth cape if you want to. And here is where we look at the not so good, or the areas that I think they could have improved on. I've always said that the Figuarts Dragon Ball line does wonders with their larger figures, and that still stands true. But once you get to this size and bigger, the lack of paint, which I know is common for all S.H.Figuarts Dragon Ball figures nowadays, becomes more apparent, and the vast spaces of unpainted plastic does kind of give the opposite of effect of looking like a premium collectible. With Cooler and Broly, there was some shading and texture in the sculpt which helped out a lot, but I think King Cold could have really done with some paint apps, shading, just anything. It just looks kind of plain and plasticky, I guess. Again, it does feel pretty good in hand. I just think a bit of paint could have taken this release to another level. Alright guys, let's take a look at articulation. Usually we have the figures popped up on the desk standing straight up, but this guy is a little bit too big to fit on frame. So yeah, I'm going to try my best here to show off King Cold's articulation, starting off with his head. So King Cold does look up. You get a little bit of a gap there with the neck, but it does help a lot with the range of articulation. Head tilt side to side and left and right as well. So all in all, great head articulation. Shoulder pads are permanently on, and they do hinge up and down. The arms do move way past 90 degrees, which is great. A little bit squeaky there. Do be careful. You don't want to snap anything. I do recommend adding some, a little bit of oil in there. Some hobby oil does the trick all the time. So yeah, make sure you oil up those tight joints. He does have 360 rotation. It is just a huge ball peg going into the shoulder there. So pretty standard stuff. It won't go all the way around with his cape on. It does get in the way. But if you take the cape off, he does rotate his shoulder 360. You have a bicep swivel, double jointed elbows, which is pretty good for a big fella. These gauntlets on his hands, they are separate pieces, so they do move individually. So I guess that does count as a bit of articulation as well. You get your wrist hinges and swivels there for the hands, and the butterfly joints are actually really good. And the reason why I have King Cold holding his sword here is to demonstrate that he can actually double grip his sword with both hands. I have one fist and one sword holding hand, but you guys get the idea. So pretty good stuff there. All right, so for his torso, he does crouch forward, not too much. The armor does get in the way a little bit. That's okay. It's decent enough. That's as much as you get going back, and you do get some side to side tilt as well. There is a little bit of rotation there at the upper torso, but most of your side to side twist is going to be at the waist. Again, squeaky joints if you can. I haven't done it yet. Try to get some oil in those joints. His cape, it's plugged in at the back, as you can see. There are two hinges, and it just hinges up and down. Pretty standard stuff. His tail, it is a ball joint straight into his butt there, and we get two joints, one at the base and one in the middle, and they are hinged ball joints, so you can swivel them side to side, and you can hinge them up and down. It is a pretty big, heavy tail. It does support the figure, but yeah. There's the articulation for the tail. For his legs, he does do the side splits pretty good, actually. For a big figure like this, very decent range going out. He kicks up about this much, about 90 degrees. Not too much going back, but it's better than nothing. You do have thigh swivel, double knees, which go past 90 degrees, which is great, and some big ball joints there at the ankles for your feet to go down and up a tad. But we do get some pretty decent enough. Hold on, there we go. Ankle pivot. So yeah, for a huge fella, he has some pretty good articulation. Probably the most limited, I guess, in the ab section there. But other than that, it's pretty good. I mean, I think you have more trouble balancing him and, getting things out of the way, like his shoulder pads and his cape, and actually getting him in dynamic poses. So you can still have a lot of fun with this. He's got a weapon holding hand, which also adds to the fun. So yeah, there we go, King Cold's articulation. Alright, so let's take a look at the throne first, since we already had a quick look earlier. It's big, It's heavy and it looks exactly the way it appeared in the anime. Probably one of the best accessories to come with any Figuarts Dragon Ball releases. Sure, it doesn't really do anything and you can't officially use it with any other character other than King Cold, but it's well made, well painted, and it doesn't feel like a cheap afterthought. Like I said, it's got some weight to it and King Cold sits on it perfectly with an extra cape piece and 2 fingers on his chin for that iconic King Cold look. Perfect. Next up we have some hands, 2 punching hands for duking it out with Trunks, a couple of open palm blast hands, and a pair of sword holding hands for, of course, holding an upscaled Trunks sword, because the sword we get with future Trunks would look ridiculously undersized in Cold's hands. The magic of anime, I guess. Anyway, it's a pretty cool piece. It looks exactly like the original. It's just a bigger, slightly thicker sword just for King Cold. Best thing is, you can get King Cold to use both hands to hold the sword. We also get a pair of crossed arms, just like many other Frieza figures did before him. And just like most of those releases, getting the crossed arms on those big arm joints can take a bit of work. If you had trouble with Vegeta, Piccolo, or even Frieza himself, you're probably gonna struggle with King Cold too. I find the best way to get it on is to remove all the pieces that make up the cape and the head itself. That way, when you put some pressure actually on the figure, there's less to worry in terms of breaking anything. Once you get it on there, it looks great. It just takes a bit of effort to get on there. I think despite the lack of paint, which the figure really does need, I'm still quite impressed with what Tamashii gave us. I've had King Cold long enough now for that initial "wow, I can't believe it's King Cold" phase to wear off, and still, in my mind, this is a great release. Again, it's not the best Frieza family release, but it is on the higher end for me. I would probably place it just a bit above the middle, below the Coolers, second form Frieza, and full power, but still better than third form, which is still a pretty great figure in my opinion. And no matter how you look at it, this is still a big, imposing piece that will turn heads in any collection. And again, while not perfect, I'm still extremely happy to have a King Cold reigning over my Frieza family. Alright, before we head out, today's IG inspiration is the extremely talented MANTOUMARU, one of the most creative and masterful photographers out. I honestly don't know how he comes up with all his concepts for his shots, but there's always something intriguing to look at, whether it be his composition, the creative poses, or the rich environments he places his subjects in. I can spend hours just looking through his work, another criminally underrated account, so go show MANTOUMARU some support and tell him I sent you. Alright guys, that's it for this review. Only a few weeks left until the end of the year, and I'll do my very best to get out as many reviews as I can before the end of 2024. I have a group live stream coming up with some old and new friends on the 28th of this month, so hope to see you all back for more reviews and that live stream. Details on that closer to the date. Make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. Likes and comments are always appreciated. Keep doing those push-ups, and as always,
よろしく